I made this journal to store all my letters I got from my PenPal. At this stage of creation it's empty. I'll show you the process of creating this cover in the video. This I will hold at my home and bind all the letters I got into this journal. All letters from one person. And this little cute notebook I will give to my PenPal. It's made the same way with the same materials. Contains a bit of writing. And this will go to my PenPal with the next letter I send, so that we have both something in the same kind, to say so. So let's start creating. I'm using an old envelope, an A4 size and some cardstock. It's from a food packaging. You can use everything you have at hand. Scrapbooking paper, cardstock, everything will go. And I'm applying some glue onto the cardstock and gluing it onto my envelope. It's very important to leave a bit of a gap between the three parts of the cover so that you can open and close it easy. Now I'm gluing on the edges and the sides so that the three pieces of cardstock will hold together very well. Repeat on all four sides. For more stabilization for the spine, I'm using some fabric. The color does not matter because you will not be able to see this in the end. We will cover it up. I'm applying glue and I'm watching out that I don't apply glue into the gaps, because then the journal will open and close not so easily. To make it even more sturdy, I used some packaging from the 500 sheets of copy paper. It's a kind of foiled paper, to say so, and I used it because I thought it is strong enough, it will be strong enough, and it is a big piece of paper which goes to the bin if you don't use it. So now I am painting. You can use every color that you want. I went with some pink and a bit of blue and tried to use some kind of dry brush strokes, to say so. And I did the same for the inner cover, for the parts that you will be able to see in the end result. I am covering my journal with some jute fabric. It's a bit difficult to glue this down. I had a very messy glue mess in the end. That's why I put some baking paper under my cover, but it worked out fine in the end. I used a huge amount of glue to make sure that everything stays in place where I wanted it to. Now for the decoration of the cover, when all is dried very well. Here I used some tissue paper, which you get when you order some things from the internet and you get a package. It usually went to the bin, but I like to use this up. It's very thin paper and it gives the journal more structure. For even more structure, I am using some structure paste and two kinds of stencils. the color does not matter because we will paint over it in the end when all is very well dried. Now I use the same dry brush strokes technique so that you will be able to see a bit of the color of the fabric beneath, and I'm using two colors to create my cover, a blue tone and a kind of darker blue violet, as you will see in a few seconds. Make sure that everything is dried before you go to the next step. In this step I am decorating my dried cover with some book page I ripped off, and I inked the edges so that the pieces of paper stand out more, and I used some tea bag labels as well, some paper ruffles I made. Now I am stamping onto some of my ripped pages or papers to make it more interesting. All these papers, paper ruffles and such kind of things will be glued on. This took a long time to make it all stay in the place I wanted it to, but I like the end result very much. So I glued everything down and made sure that it stays where I wanted it to be. I decided to work the glued papers more in so that they will be more so that they will not stand out as much, but so that they will blend in more with the background. After drying, I painted the new parts to make sure everything is blending nicely all together. To make the structures even stand out more, I used some gold paint and just my finger, and I went lightly over every section of the journal, especially over the sections which stand out more. After that I decided I wanted gold edges, so I glued some more of this light tissue paper on to have a more even surface for gluing on my gold edges, because my surface was so uneven that I feared my gold edges would not stay where I wanted them to. So after gluing and drying, we paint again. I painted the edges with the blue, the violet and the gold to blend everything together. Then I used my hot glue gun and glued the gold edges, the gold elements onto the edges. I painted the inner cover as well with the blue, the violet and the gold. The same steps I did for the outside to blend it all together and make it cohesive. Then I added an eyelet. It was a bit tricky because of the thickness of the journal, but in the end it worked fine, and I used some vanish to seal my work. This scrapbooking paper is for the inner covers, as you will see, and I will make them a bit more older, look older and used. with some distress oxide, some stamping to make it more cohesive with the outside of the cover, distress the edges, ink the edges. I have 2 colors of distress oxide. Inking the edges again, and then I used some black tea. Stamping again, just here and there, not too much. And here comes my black tea, and I'm just randomly blotting here and there some tea. Now I added a button for a closure, and I used some elastic band for my closure because I don't like when my journal opens up, so I like to add a closure every time. I sewed onto the edges of the scrapbook for the inner covers and glued them in. And this is the final result. I was able to fit 15 letters, 15 signatures into my journal.